Hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ashley. I'm very nervous.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
All this is Ashley's work.
So I think we're about 40 people here, and we have about 40-ish people joining us online. So welcome to everybody who's virtual. It's fitting that I'm coordinating Craig's services today, along with Belle, my sweetie, and Craig's dear friend and caregiver for the last 7 years. When I met Craig in 2009, we were budding Buddhists, and we were coordinating every single Shambhala program and party that we could get our hands on. And I didn't know when Craig and I bonded while shaking our butts on a dance floor on retreat in Nova Scotia. Some of you were there. I didn't know that when we met that I would have the honor of holding his hand when he took his last breath. Let the tears come. So shortly before Craig died, I asked him, did you ever imagine that when we met, I would be here with you at the end of your life? And he sort of waved his hand in the air, both dismissively and cosmically. And he said, you planned this all from the beginning. And I laughed because I'm pretty sure he planned this all from the beginning. And that is how coordinators argue with each other. So you are all here today because Craig indeed did plan this whole thing, and with each of you deep in his heart. It's my pleasure to introduce Charlie Byron. It was back in Boston in 2009 when Craig and Charlie met. And at that time, Charlie was a local Boston Shambhala teacher and was guiding and advising the LGBTQ meditation group that Craig and Alyssa's here, Alyssa were co-leading at that time. And so Charlie and Craig worked together on a number of talks and short programs. And when Bill and I asked Craig who we wanted to lead this ceremony, he was like, Charlie Byron, I love him. And so we gave Charlie a call, and Charlie, we're so happy to have you with us today. So thank you for leading. Oh, I'm gonna
I thought,
help you.
because I don't know how to do it. Well,
We have multiple microphones.
One for you and one for the web.
That's fun.
Everybody can hear me, not too loud. Well, thank you, Ashley. Welcome, everybody. It's really an extraordinary thing to be here for me. I felt very honored that Craig asked, and he asked Ashley to ask me to do this, and then he called me from his ICU bed, and sort of to seal the deal is what I thought. And he was just joyous, just thinking about this gathering, and I guess what came next. I've just never experienced that before. He was all Craig. So that was, I don't know. It's been very full here already, seeing his work and meeting all of you. And one of the things that really struck me when I read the sort of obituary that Ashley wrote was he's had all these chapters of his life that I don't know anything about. I knew him for this little slice of time in Boston and somewhat when I was in Vermont already, but I didn't know him as a costume designer or a frat boy. So I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody's stories. I'm sure everybody's looking forward to hearing everybody's stories. What we're going to do today is a traditional funeral service in the Shambhala Buddhist lineage. And it was created by the founder of it, Chicken Trungpa. You might wonder how you fit into it if you're not a Buddhist or have never had anything to do with this. And I feel like it's really important to know that the elements, there are some practices that we will do, but the elements of that really are our minds that we have and our hearts that we have and our caring for Craig that we have. You don't need anything else besides that, and you won't be making any other commitments or anything, any sort of belief. It's just about working with that. And the point of today, in terms of at least a ritual or a ceremony, is to say goodbye and to let him go. And ritually, at least, to let him let go. So it's, I feel bittersweet as I say that, but that's a very important part of the Buddhist teaching around this, is that things come to an end and people have to move on. And yet we can wish them the most marvelous next, whatever it turns out to be. So that's pretty much what we'll do. There's three parts to the way this is organized. There's a remembrance when everybody gets to remember and share what you want to share. And hopefully we'll have time for everybody who wants to say something. And then we'll have a period of practice. And there are basically three practices that we'll do. And one of them is just to sit in silence together for a few minutes, using our breath as sort of the anchor that keeps us in the room. And that kind of way of settling down after all of the, I'm sure, laughs that we'll have hearing about Craig. And then there's a section of compassion meditation, which is intended to help with whatever suffering might have happened to him, might be happening to him. Part of the Buddhist understanding of death is that you lose your body and sometimes you don't know. And so it's confusing or destabilizing. So there's ways that basically each of us will use our imagination and our care to feel into what might not be so hot. And we'll use our own wisdom that's available on every breath to send that to him. So we'll do that for a few minutes, and then we'll do the formal Sukhavati practice. And I'll talk a little bit more about that before we start. It's descended from the Pure Land tradition, which encompasses both Tibet and Japan and probably other places. and it addresses an eternal Buddha who I understand as not a nice old guy somewhere, but an intrinsic aspect of the universe that we just wake up and talk to, basically. And so that's a practice that we'll chant together, and you have the words. One of the things that we'll chant, by the way, is Craig's Buddhist names, and you can see them here, and I think I'll just say them now while I remember to, because they're lovely. You get, in the Shambhala tradition, you get lots of names. Pretty much when you take a vow, you get a name. And so and they're all sort of inspired choices, it seems. So Craig's Buddhist names are Insight Chariot, Civilization Warrior, and Good Majestic Tree. I think I don't need to say anything more about the, oh, and then the last thing, I said there were three. The last thing is that we'll all eat together and talk. So that's a lovely way to finish and kind of tie things together. So maybe, Ashley, you would like to start remembering it. We have readings and we have songs, I think, and lots of things we probably don't know, but go for it. Good. Yeah.
Well, it's so nice to see you all, really. I just wanted to write down a few things to read about Craig. My name is Bill, and Craig was a dear friend for the last 7 years. In fact, we met right here in this center and in this room. I had made an intention to find some way to be of service in the world. And I saw Craig and I thought maybe he could use some help, someone to get his groceries, to hang out. So I went up to Craig and I said, "Hey, Craig, I've been thinking about you." And he looked at me and he said, "I've been thinking about you." And the rest is history. And Craig really gave me a gift. The gift of his friendship, to hear about his remarkable life and path, to share my path and life with him, and the gift of being called to service, the gift of connection with all of you. Actually, I have a message from Craig that he wanted me to share with all of you, which is he really wanted to be here today. He said that a bunch in the last weeks of his life. And then he would say, "Well, maybe I will be there." When I think of Craig, above all else, I think of connection. He loved connecting with people and loved connecting people together. This was what Craig did in Kingston, at Hamilton College, in his JP neighborhood, and at Shambhala. This ceremony, all of us together from different parts of his life, is exactly what he wanted. I also owe Craig a debt of gratitude because after Craig's second stroke, when I was in the hospital with him, Ashley, who I didn't really know at that time, messaged me and said, "Hi, Bill, I heard you're helping Craig after his stroke. I was with him a lot after his first stroke. Let me know if I can help Craig or you with anything." And so that caught my attention. And then when Ashley and I were pursuing each other, I'd tell Craig, "Hey, maybe we should look at some old photos, maybe from the Boston Shambhala days." And then we'd find photos of Ashley and I'd pepper him with questions about her. And Ashley would come out here to visit Craig and she would do the same thing, pepper him with questions about me. And I learned some very important lessons from Craig. Once I was complaining about something or other about Ashley, I should. The one and only time I was complaining about something, it was something like, "She does this thing, it drives me nuts. How do I get her to stop?" And Craig looked at me and he said pointedly, "You don't get her to stop." He said, "You just learn to live with it." He said, "I was with Chuck for 25 years and nothing changed." He said, you don't try to change someone. You just learn to live with it and you let it go. And that turned out to be very good advice. The other thing I learned about Craig was how to just be yourself and trust in that unfolding. Craig was himself through and through, unapologetically. Well, kind of unapologetically. As he would say, sorry, not sorry. Craig spent a lot of time in the 2 weeks before he died with a bunch of us sitting around in his hospital room, planning this ceremony, telling old stories and dropping pearls of wisdom. Here's one that stays with me. He said, we just have to be kind, be brave, be big, and love, love, love. That's it. It was a great joy to know Craig these last 7 years. I'll miss him dearly. I took the Bodhisattva vows with Craig, and that was the weekend when we made our big connection with each other. The connection that was central to the last 7 years of both of our lives. And one aspect of the Bodhisattva vow is that you vow to be reborn again and again to free all sentient beings. If there's anyone in this world who is destined to come back again and again to help, it's Craig. Because despite all the ups and downs, he just loved it here. He just loved it all so much. He just loved all of us so much. So goodbye for now, old friend. I love you, and until we meet again.
So the floor is really open. I'll just say we have some folks who are joining over live stream that I'll read, but I'll kind of do that throughout. And I know there's like maybe a song that might happen from some people. So anyway, it's just like really feel welcome, whoever wants to just jump in, and then we'll riff with each other. But you do have to go to the microphone.
First, I just have to say, and I think a lot of this might have been Ashley and Bill's doing. Ashley, especially this amazing place that you made, and that room in there. Oh my God! I mean, that's Craig would say, you know. So anyway, and also thank you for that wonderful slideshow with all those pictures. And Susanna, if you're out there, in virtual land, those pictures that you sent in, Ashley put them all part of this slideshow of Craig's life. So it's really wonderful. So quick, I'm going to take a chance. Show of hands. How many people in the last week or so have had a mango lassi? I see some hands. I'm seeing some hands. That's good. I mean, Craig had that kind of influence on us, and now that's kind of becoming a thing. So my name's Dave Jolson, and Alicia and Dick will come up next, and we're part of Craig's background from Hamilton College days and after. So I don't know what to say about it. It was a half a century ago, and all these people kind of converge in this little town in upstate New York, Clinton, New York, sometimes referred to ironically as the Versailles of Utica. And there wasn't really a lot to do there other than to kind of bond with the other people that were stuck there. And that's what we did. And there's probably a dozen people in this room or remotely from those years that are with us now that have bonded in that way. And Craig was on our hall freshman year. There's a bunch of us that were on that hall. And I was thinking about it. We're all unique, but Craig was, I think, a little more unique in some respects, I suppose. And, and I was trying to think, well, what was it about him? And then what it was, I think, one thing, he had style. Like, we didn't have style. Like, nobody had style. We had, like, long, greasy hair and torn pants before they were stylish. And but Craig was he had style, and he was thoughtful, and he had taste in music, and he used to also wear these hats. He had these really sharp looking hats, and we're not as creative as the, you know, the Buddhist world. I guess he's got a Chi Psi name as well. And we call him Hatter. And that's what we started calling him that year. And that's what we call him to this day. So Hatter, love you, baby. And another thing that happened that year was, I think a lot of you know him as being something of an animal lover. Well, there was a kind of a dog on campus that needed a home. Eeyore, and somehow Eeyore and Hatter found each other. I don't really know how that worked out. And Eeyore was pretty independent minded. He'd hitchhike into town and back up the hill. He would do that. He knew how to, you know, negotiate all of that. And they were inseparable. Eeyore was pretty famous, so the fame kind of bounced off Eeyore and kind of encompassed Hatter as well. But Eeyore was honestly more famous. But you know, it was a wonderful thing. And when Craig got his diploma at our graduation, Eeyore went up with him, and you know, and got it as well. And he told me years later that when Eeyore started to get really sick, and Hatter, Craig would pick him up, and Eeyore was a big dog, and Hatter was not a big man. But he would pick up that dog and take him outside, and you know, take care of him. And then when Eeyore finally passed away, Hatter told me he cried for a week. Yeah. So I'm not sure what else I want to say. Well, stepping outside the area a little bit, one thing in two quick stories, and then I'll turn it over. One is Hatter has those, you know, in his apartment, he's got that table with all the papers all piled up. And so we had some discussion about that. And, you know, you talk about, you know, nothing changed in 25 years with Chuck. He told me this wonderful story. I said, well, what do we, you know, and he told me that Chuck, one day he came home, because he's been doing this for forever, right? You don't change. He said, all the papers were gone. I said, what happened? He said, well, Chuck threw them all out. And I says to Chuck, you can't just throw out the bills. You can't do that. And Chuck said to him, yeah, they'll send more. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So that was, to me, that was like a little insight into that life that I didn't really get to know them when they were together like that, but I kind of loved that little thing. And then finally, you know, in the last couple of weeks, Vini and I, Vini is Rich, that's his Chi Psi name, is Vini. We were coming up and helping him kind of clean out his place a little bit, and we would, you know, pick up, you know, all these articles of clothing. Can we donate these? And he would like agonize over each of them. And then one time he says, well, where's those jeans that I had, the size, you know, 34s? And well, we didn't take them. And he goes, no, I think you did. And so the next run to the place, we dropped all his clothes off. We go inside, and sure enough, there's the Hatter's jeans with the rolled up legs and everything. And Vini bought them for $14. And we brought it back, and Craig was very happy, and we just laughed, you know, little things, you know, would make him, you know. So I miss my friend, and I'm grateful to be here at this, and that we can all remember him together. Thank you. Alicia?
I'm Vini's wife, Alicia Mincelet. I met Hatter in 2009. A lot of us seem to have met him that was his year. Our daughter Kara was looking at colleges in Boston. So we were up in Boston looking at schools, and we looked at BU, and Rich said, hey, you know, my friend Hatter, you know, did his theater work at BU, and I wonder if we, you know, maybe can find him or see him and visit him. So we did. And he was thrilled. And for those of you that know Craig, if he loves something, he wanted you to love it too. Okay. And it all centered around food for the most part. So he, you know, took us to a favorite restaurant. No, I think the day started with, we're going to go thrift expecting he needed new pants. We're going to go to the thrift shop, Boomerang in JP. So my job was to hold all the pairs of pants on my arm. You were only allowed 5 articles in the dressing room. So I was the Sherpa, had all the pants on my arm. He'd take 5, go in, and as he tried on each one, my daughter was the fashion consultant. He'd come out, he'd do a little spin, and he'd say, I don't know, I think they're a little baggy here. What do you think, Kara? So Kara would have to say yay or nay. This one, I think there was only 1 dressing room in the place. Everybody's kind of like, what are you going to do? So I don't know. Did we even end up getting a pair of pants that day? I don't remember. Did we? Okay. So got the pants. And then we had to go to the Cambodian and Thai place. Now, we didn't have any exposure to this kind of food. Oh no, I'll tell you what to order. No worries. No worries. So we went and we had Cambodian food. Everything was delicious. Then we drove around to, what's the name of it? Forest Hill Cemetery. And there was a special place where Chuck, not that he was buried there, but there was a special meaning. There was a tree and there was some stones there. And, we went and we visited Chuck because we never knew Chuck. We didn't know him during that portion of his life. So that was visit, I think, number 1. Then our daughter ended up going to Northeastern. So of course we were coming up to Boston quite a few times. So we stayed with Hatter. So he was gracious enough to give up his bedroom to me. And he and Rich slept on the couches down in the living room. And they were bantering till the wee hours of the morning. And it was like they were roommates again. I mean, talk about the odd couple, like the things that they said to each other were awful. Oh, they loved each other and they said ridiculous things to each other. It was like, yeah, the odd couple, you moron, you putz. I mean, that's who they were. So they were up the wee hours of the morning on the couch, just like they were back at Chi Psi. So Kara had her 19th birthday, her freshman year. She invited a bunch of girls. We were going to go out. And of course, Hatter came with us, picked Indian restaurant. We had never had Indian food either. He introduced us all to Indian food. He sat with all the girls. They loved him. He ordered everything for them. Rich and I were just the chauffeurs and the people that paid the bill. It was Hatter's party. He partied with the girls for Kara's 19th birthday. And then, there were subsequent visits and again, centered around food. Rich and Kara are both gluten intolerant. Well, Hatter found out that at Fiore's Bakery in Boston, JP, I think it was, that they had gluten-free stuff. He bought them out. It was insane. I was like, how much money? Nah. He bought all this gluten-free food for them. And then the other food thing was JP Licks. Had to go to JP Licks. Absolute. You must go before you leave. So we were introduced to JP Licks. And then breakfast. He had a favorite breakfast place. Took about 2 hours to get him out of the house. I know some dawdlers. Couldn't hurry him. So Rich finally said, Hatter, are we doing lunch or breakfast? Went there, had a great time. But how I really bonded with Hatter was one of our fraternity brothers that's not with us today. There was a reunion we had at the house. He owned a big property, still does, up in Princeton, Massachusetts. His name is Charlie. His wife, Deb. Hatter came, and it was after Chuck had passed. And I think he just wanted to reunite with us all. He brought a picture of Chuck. We have a photo of all of us on the porch, and he's got Chuck in his lap in a picture. So Chuck was with us. We had a great time, but the highlight was Dave and Greg, way back is his name, play guitar, Chi Psi name, play guitar. So we had a big bonfire out in Charlie's yard. Charlie's throwing wood pallets on it. This thing is huge. They play guitar and I sing. I'm a singer. So we're all singing. And then Craig says, do you know any mamas and papas? I said, oh, sure. So he and I, that was our thing. We sang Mamas and Papas songs. So we started with California Dreaming because everybody knows that. And then he said, do you know Got a Feeling? That was his song. And he started singing. I said, oh yeah, it's a great one. So we sang. And then he said, oh, you got a great voice for Words of Love. Let's do Words of Love. We went through the whole, that was our thing. So the last time I saw Craig was in September. We were again at a reunion at Dick and Marion's house. And, you know, he had the oxygen. It was amazing. He even could make it. And Joel's had brought his keyboard and we sang a couple songs. And then he said, do you want to sing some Mamas and Papas? And I said, sure. And we did. We sang Got a Feeling and we sang Words of Love. And then shortly before he died, within the week, Rich was on the phone with him, as was the habit. Usually in the morning, he would call very early. Either he was afraid or something came over. He wanted to talk to Rich because Rich could settle him down. And he comes in the phone. He says, Hatter wants to sing with you. So I put on the laptop and I put on Got a Feeling. And we sang. And then he said, I knew you were going to sing Words of Love too. Let's do Words of Love. I said, sure. So we put on Words of Love and we sang together. That was, you know, that was my last time talking with Craig. You know, Craig was just, he was a multi-generational. He got along with Kara and her friends. He got along with older people, loved him. He got along with everybody. And that laugh, I was trying to imitate his laugh. I've never heard anyone have that laugh. It's just infectious. And, you know, he just, you know, he would do this. And even in the Zoom, when he was so ill, it was like Hollywood Squares because we were all in there. And he's with the mask on and Ashley was there and she was helping him. And so he couldn't really talk all that much, but someone would say something he loved and he'd go, you know. So we love you, Hatter, and you will be missed, but we have you here. So you're still with us. Thank you. Sorry, Nick.
Okay, let's see here. I got a few prepared words. Let me get these going here. Some of you know, a bunch of us do an annual trip to the Adirondacks. And about 5 years ago, someone came up with an idea. Why don't we get Hatter involved? And
That was you.
I think it was, I always thought it was Tommy. Yeah, yeah. I always thought it was Tommy, but well, it didn't take long, right? We fell in love with him all over again. You know, I hadn't seen him, but it was just all getting right back to where we were. Many respects, he was the same Hatter. His speech, his delivery, as you know, changed a bit, but it was all the more captivating somehow. Next thing you knew, you were a fan of Catherine O'Hara, Jennifer Coolidge, and the Woosahs, you know, and I'm a Yankee fan. Okay, Hatter's frittata. Okay, at these trips, everybody had a meal, right? And Hatter picked out the frittata. Now, some of us could spell frittata. Not everybody knew exactly what went into it, but it was Hatter's thing. And we made such a thing out of Hatter's frittata. We talked about it all the time. Of course, he didn't actually cook the frittata, right? He produced it, right? And Kazzy and Joey and everybody who was there, Ginny, they would gather around and Hatter would give his orders, you know, and we ended up with these wonderful frittatas. And then next year the recipe would be a little different, which made it a little bit of a challenge, but we had such fun with the whole frittata thing. Those trips to the Adirondack, they spawned two more really wonderful things that gave us a sense of community with Hatter. First one was, of course, the annual trip to the Woo Sox game. He loved that. Oh, he loved the Woo Sox. One year, Cedane Rafaela hit a home run, and then the next year he'd be playing for the Red Sox. And Hatter was, all over that stuff. And he loved those trips to the Woo Sox game. And then we would go to Charlie's house, which, you talked about. It's a great house, beautiful porch, and just hang out after. And it was an annual event, and it was just fantastic, much like the ones that you were talking about, which we did around 2010 and 2009. Okay. Then we started weekly Monday Zooms. And like people said, the Hollywood Squares, we'd have 8 or 9 people, who was in the middle, all that kind of stuff. And Hatter was really the center of attention with that. And we so look forward to those weekly Zooms. And we gave him his own segment on the Zooms, which was called Pop Culture, because he was on top of all that stuff. And of course, we had, our idea of pop culture was, 30 years ago. Hatter was very current on everything. So it was a service that he did for us. To do that, yeah. I'm going to go back to these remarks just for a second, because I think they're important. As much as Hatter was about fun, he was more about substance. His lack of pretense always on display. Every conversation was nothing if not direct. If you cared about him, he cared about you, and then some. He had a sixth sense about such things. As Marion once said, he was a gentle force. In closing, I kind of want to quote a fraternity brother who put something out on the internet just recently. If Hatter was telling us anything, it is the joy and power of our common friendships, the magic of our mutual experiences, and that these are the most important things. Hatter and Chuck, we love you very much. Yes, so we talked about the song, so we're gonna do the song.
Hatter was pretty clear about that.
Gentlemen.
Oh, gentlemen, fair Chi Psi. So we'll see if everybody remembers the words. This is very long.
Song of the year. It'll come back really fast.
I love that we have so many people here.
I don't know if you hear that, Michael.
Okay, here we go, fellas. Fair Chi Psi, can we ever leave thee? Leave thy sheltering walls, bum, 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 leave the home of our affection. Leave thy mystic halls. Chi Psi's ever, even till death, all out the sun shall be. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. We have pledged our whole devotion to fraternity, fraternity. We love bringing that song.
We won't make anyone follow that just yet.
We'll take the bullet.
So we'll just read some virtual folks.
So this is from some people who couldn't be here today, but wanted to submit some memories of Craig. Can we do the first one?
Sure.
So this is Michael Greenbaum, a friend of Craig's from the Senior Gay Men's Group, which meets weekly at the Northampton Senior Center that Craig was part of. Michael says, I'm sorry that my age and mobility prevent me from joining you this afternoon in person, but I am grateful for the chance to share my fondness for Craig and also represent the sense of loss that longtime members of the group feel. I joined the group 8 years ago, and Craig had been a member before that. Sadly, I only knew him after his health issues had severely affected his mobility and independence, and once the pandemic arrived, we were by necessity remote friends. But I remember many Zoom chats marked by his gentleness and humor and his ability to look beyond adversity, and also his great capacity for friendship. He spoke often about those of you gathered here who both locally and in the Boston area provided unstinting support and love. While I suspect that often this was not easy, Craig was an easy person to love and care for. We spoke of the arts, especially theater, and of some current issues, although he was not comfortable with political talk. I wonder if there's a confrontational bone in his body. There was. I wish I had known Craig in his younger years, but I am grateful for our friendship, for his wide circle of friends who I do not know. I am happy that through Craig, we can share friendship this afternoon.
This is from Lisa Troy, who was a Boston theater friend. Lisa said, I will hold dear to my heart the memories of our friendship, the many afternoons I spent visiting Craig and Chuck in Jamaica Plain. I live not far away. My wonder at the beauty of Craig's backyard gardens, our shared laughter, the times so many of us helped build costumes in his back rooms, those hasty pudding theatricals, and my great admiration for his incredible creative spirit. Craig was truly a gifted artist.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the long ones.
This is from Vinnie Murphy, who I believe was a friend of Craig's back in Boston. He said, Craig is the most remarkable theater artist I ever collaborated with. He first designed the costumes and props for a very earthy Macbeth that I did at the Boston Shakespeare Company in 1980. There's a wonderful picture on the front page of the Boston Phoenix of a crown that he created that both revealed the new king's authority and brutality with spikes for the tiara. The photo shows him modeling that crown on my head. He went on to own his own costume shop in downtown Boston with several very satisfied employees that he inspired and drove to excellence. Craig was the resident costume and prop designer for Theater Works and created a series of insightful and inspiring creations. Of the many memorable ones that he did was They All Want to Play Hamlet, which we produced at our theater in Boston and on the main stage of the American Repertory Theater and in front of Joe Papp at the Public Theater in New York. This was a one-man version of the play we had worked on for 3 years, so Craig had to create multiple characters for the solo Hamlet to interact with. Craig came up with a series of astonishing designs, including an Ophelia, who is half of a female dressed dummy that could flip over when she let her life go, and her chest exploded outward with flowers. The audience gasped. He was sweet, driven, playful, generous, lovely, a great friend. I sent him a Valentine, as I do to many of the people that I care about. He took it as a sign that I loved him, and he was right.
This is from Bruce Cole, who is also a Shambhala Boston friend. Bruce says, whenever Craig said love, it stretched on so long as to seem like a 4-syllable word. Craig manifested that love in his body and heart for all of us gathered today, for the world. When I last saw Craig in the hospital, despite his harrowing circumstances, it felt like walking into joy. It was always like that with him. What a deep relief and amazing gift to find Craig fully himself. Was there even a moment in his life he was not richly himself? So many of us in our last days are left with diminished versions of ourselves. Craig was as open-hearted, radiant, and loving as ever. What an honor to walk alongside his light. And this is from Catherine Deputat, also a Boston friend. It's complicated. Was a phrase I heard Craig utter more than any other over our decades as neighbors, friends in JP. It's complicated. fill in the it saved him having to explain whatever was in his view, well, very complicated. So it struck me witnessing his ever so quiet, graceful, peaceful passing, how very uncomplicated it was. He graduated, I think, by then. He had seen the light. I had a visit from Craig during sleep a few nights ago. He had thoughtfully, carefully prepared small, personalized packets for his loved ones. Their names were printed neatly in marker across the flap of each packet. I was pleased to find one with my name on it, Catherine Deputat. These were packets of seeds, and mine were dahlias, for which I've grown every year for I don't know how long. He was giving us seeds to plant, but he's already planted a seed by showing us it's actually very simple. Forgive everyone, everything. Just love, just love.
So I'm Melissa. Craig and I ran the LGBT meditation group at Shambhala in Boston. And we ran it together for 5 years. Craig, when I first met Craig, we were doing level 2 in Boston, one of the first classes that you do in the progression at Shambhala. And Craig was very much a believer of the Shambhala phrase, auspicious coincidence. And he felt that every person he met, and as the events happened, were an auspicious coincidence. And when we met that day, we were sitting and talking. He had been going on and off to the LGBT meditation group, and the person who was leading at the time was stepping down. And Craig had volunteered to take it over. And as Craig and I are sitting there talking, like I said, we just met. I was saying how I'd been interested in going, I just hadn't really had a chance to. And he's like, well, I'm looking for for some co-coordinators. I'm looking for a woman. I'm looking for someone who is bi. I'm looking for somebody who is trans. I'm looking for a person of color. And I just raised my hand. I'm like, yeah, I feel the rest of those for you. And that's how Craig and I started leading the meditation group. Every month for 5 years. He was there for me when my partner died in 2014. I kind of find that all of a sudden a little auspicious. I was thinking about it just as I was sitting here, that's just over 10 years ago since her death. And the fact that all of a sudden the next Sukhavati I've done ever since then is Craig's 10 years later, auspicious. And our lives together, our friendship seems to have been like that. After Craig had his first stroke, the following year, we went to do what's called Warriors Assembly. And before the assembly started, we all decided to go to the beach at the lake near the Carmicholing up in Vermont. And as we were about to go into the water, we were talking about, what we were expecting for Warriors Assembly. And he's like, why do I have to learn stroke practice? I've already had a stroke. I don't need practice. And that was just the humor he brought to life. Unfortunately, the last time I saw Craig was 7 years ago. I was coming down from Vermont from a doctor's appointment. I had broken my leg 6 months earlier. And I contacted him. I'm like, Craig, I'm on my way back home. I'm passing through Northampton. And he's just like, yeah, I'm actually in the hospital right now. I believe that's when he had just had his second stroke. And so I stopped by and saw him, and we spent about an hour or so together. After that, Craig and I just messaged back and forth every once in a while, wishing each other a happy birthday. And while we didn't get a chance to see each other, there was always that connection. And I've been thinking about Craig the week of Thanksgiving. And then Thanksgiving night, for some strange reason, I decided, you know what? Let me check Facebook. I hadn't actually been on Facebook in 6 years at that point. And I go into Facebook, and the very first thing on my feed was the fact that Craig had died 2 days earlier. And I was just like, God, I am so glad that I was able to see that, so I could at least, come here and say goodbyes to my friend. And once again, it's just the auspiciousness of it. I also realized that today it's been 13 years, almost to the day, since Craig and I met. And it's like, just seems like it's coincidence on top of coincidence with Craig. So thank you so much. And I'll miss you so much, Craig. And I'm glad I could at least say my goodbyes. Thank you.
Hi, all the Chi Psi guys know me as Julie Vanderman. Because one of your dear brothers was my first husband, Audi. And I just remember the whole gang came to our wedding. It was like, we had fun, and Hatter was there, of course, and I just always called him Hatter. In fact, I probably didn't even know his name was Craig until later on. But I had the privilege of being able to spend a January term out living at the Chi Psi house and having a grand old time, pretty much being the only girl there. It was cool. And Craig was putting on a production of Cleopatra. And so I love costume designing too. And so we made these beautiful skirt. I just remember painting it with all the Egyptian things on it. And I thought I still had it someplace, but I couldn't find it. So anyway, and then of course, as you probably know, Audi and I did not last, which I take blame for. I was too much flippity budget. But I got this phone call probably about 1.5 years ago, and it was Hatter. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, come see me. He says, and I'm like, oh, but you guys almost hate me. I mean, like I did this awful thing. And he's like, no, we don't hate you, come up. And I went up to his house and I saw him, he'd had his 2 strokes. And it was so funny because we're there talking and some of you guys started calling, some of the guys from Chi Psi. And he's like, guess who I'm here with? Guess who I'm here with? And, I think it was Hatter's love just spreading out. And I'm so glad I got to spend the last 1.5 years. I wish I had more opportunity to come up and see him more. My life's busy, but and then spending the last few weeks coming up and working with him. And as I was telling people, he's my last college friend to pass away, because that's my college friend. So anyway, just Godspeed, Hat. I'm gonna miss you. Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Should we move on? Well, now we have these practices, and I feel like it's very important to talk about these a little bit, because everyone's expressed so much love, and I feel like I've just been bathing up here in it. And the first practice is very obvious. We'll just settle. Just be quiet for a little while. Second practice is pretty obvious, because we're trying to be helpful in a mental way, anyway. The last practice has to do with saying goodbye and letting go. And I felt as I was listening to all of this, like, oh, I'm going to be such a downer here. But really, I think what we're letting go of, this is a pretty important idea in Buddhism. There's this idea of letting go of attachment. And then you think, okay, what's attachment? And I think it's not taking delight in the way somebody was. And it's not really wanting the best for them. What I think we're talking about when we say letting go of attachment is any ways that we want to say, don't go, don't go. I need you here. I want you to stay. And it's also for him to let go in that way, to say, okay, they let me go. I'm on my way. Because who knows what's next? But the Buddhist understanding, I think, is, you don't know. It could be anything. So this third service that we'll do, the first part is talking to this sort of principle called Amitabha, who Amitabha Buddha is understood as the Buddha of infinite light, or in a slightly different form, infinite lives. And the understanding is that he can allow someone to be reborn in a really great place, an especially great place where it's possible to attain enlightenment very, very quickly, and it's not very hard, unlike here. So it's called Sukhavati, which is why the practice is called Sukhavati. And it's in Tibetan, it's a beautiful word called Dewachan. So the first part is this, I think, lovely chant of, there's a sort of almost a quality of bargaining in it, because you hope for the absolute top thing, and then it says, if that can't happen, okay, how about this other really good thing? And if that can't happen, and so there's this kind of, you come out of it with the sense of, yeah, whatever, I just want it to be great. And that way you don't have to get attached to, well, I don't even know what this thing is that I'm hoping for him. So there's that. And then the second part of the practice, there's a mantra that we'll say, and the first word is Amitabhaya. It's Namo, sorry. Namo is like a sort of Sanskrit, hey, sir, or madam. It's a polite wake-up call. And Amitabhaya is his name in Sanskrit. And the last word is Hri. And you don't have to trill the R's. That's only my understanding of how you're supposed to say it anyway, but that's the way I say it. It's Hri. And Hri is understood to be Amitabha's seed syllable, which is sort of the thing that evokes him or invokes him. He has to be there when you say that. So that's why we're saying that again and again. And the thing which is something to work with, is that as we chant that, I'm going to light his picture on fire. And so that's a very tangible, and I feel actually a crude teaching about letting go. And it's us letting go, and it's letting him let go. But I just think it's important not to think that you're supposed to let go of some lovely memory of him. It's that you're letting go of wanting him here, or wanting him not to move on, just saying, go for it, which is such a Craig thing. I mean, I think that's sort of why he looked forward to this, is because that's what he was thinking is, I'm on my way. So we should all sit up like we do when we're paying attention. Just take a comfortable posture, but upright. You won't need your papers just yet. You will after a while, but the first two we can just do however. So take a comfortable posture and just let your breath go out. Hear the sound in the room, in the space. Feel your body breathing, sitting on this chair. Just feel. Feel how it feels to be here, to have heard all that, be with all these things of his. And if you find yourself thinking about where you're going next, or how your leg hurts or something, there's nothing wrong with that. You just come back to the breath, because it's always there. And traditionally, we keep our eyes open for this. You can do whichever you like. Just gaze slightly downward. But you're in the room, you're hearing the room, being with everyone. You feel some restlessness or wondering if you're doing it right, it's fine. Just have a laugh and come back to your breath. Thank you. I think that was 5 minutes, maybe 6. So the compassion practice that we're going to do, I suddenly feel like I have an echo. What happened? Okay. Well, is called sending and taking in English. That was emphasis. And it's called Tonglen in Tibetan. And it's been done for thousands of years, as far as I know. And what we're doing is we're also using the breath in this practice, but we're using our imagination too, and heart, to feel into the way somebody might be suffering, in this case, Craig. But this practice can be used in all sorts of contexts. So you can do Tonglen for yourself. You can do Tonglen for everybody in the United States, or everybody in the world, or all sentient beings everywhere. It's all fine. What we're doing is we're imagining how someone might suffer, what that might feel like to them, which can be a little scary because we're going to breathe in. We're breathing it in and using the in-breath to feel that. But what that suffering comes into, right, saying move along. What that suffering comes into is an open, clear awareness that we raise before we start. That you might think it sounds like, oh, here comes the highfalutin thing that's like this difficult thing to do, but actually we're talking about something that's intrinsic to being human. Everybody can do this, and we'll do it by what we call flashing. Absolute awakened mind. And we could just do it for a moment now. The idea is that you just flash brilliant, white, open, clear, radiant, cool. And whatever take you have of that, whatever experience you have, is what you are sending out with your out-breath to the person that you're offering compassion to. There's no need to fix anything, although if you have something on your mind that you want to offer, of course, breathe that out too. But the core of it is just this instantaneous experience of open, brilliant, light, cool, calm, whatever your experience of it is. Does that make sense to people? Okay, good. So the way we're going to start this is just to take a moment and bring Craig to mind again and have a second to think, what might it feel like that's not so hot to him? What might I like to really send to him as reassurance, settling, not fearing, whatever it is. I should have mentioned you do this as well usually with the eyes shut. It's just easier. And the last thing I want to say about practicing is practicing really just means you take your best shot, and when it doesn't work, you do it again. It's not like there's a right way at all. You can trust that you have your connection and you have your moment of brightness, and that's all you need for this. So having brought Craig to mind, do that flash. When your breath goes out, send that to him. As your breath comes in, breathe in whatever suffering you pick up. Then when you breathe out again, more light, brilliant space, clarity, clear, cool. You may find that you can't make that flip with each out breath or breath cycle. That's fine. Just work it out so that it works. After a while, it gets easier. So now we'll have our Sukhavati. I need to arrange a little bit for a moment here. Get my accoutrements in place. Everybody ready? Free in the profundity and brilliance of Dharmakaya, the compassion of Avalokiteshvara arises. In the magnificent and victorious vision, we proclaim the jnana of Amitabha. You are in the state of simplicity and you are free from fetters. You have actually attained the fundamental enlightenment. Please look upon us. Forgive us our confusion. Forgive us that we have been misled by the samsaric world. I make offerings to you. I rejoice in your virtues. I request you to remain in our world and continue to turn the wheel of Dharma. Namo Amitabhaya Samaya Tishtuam. Please accept drinking water, flowers, incense, light, perfume, food, and music. I praise your magnificent wisdom and power. You can liberate all sentient beings with one glance of your prajna and upaya. I request you to liberate the sentient beings who have passed and departed from their physical lives. May they be released from their samsaric fetters and attain liberation at once. If not so, may they attain a good human birth, which is free and well-favored. If that is not possible, may they be freed from the lower realms. I aspire to and worship your vision and your vow, so that this particular sentient being, Craig Sonnenberg, Insight Chariot, Good Majestic Tree, Civilization Warrior, and all other sentient beings may be liberated from the fetters and pleasures, so that they may begin to overcome their mental obstacles and begin to understand the notion of egolessness. May they be freed from the state. May they attain a state of liberation. May the merit of the Sangha provide eternal companionship for them. May the blessings of the teacher lead them on their journey. May their relatives and companions proceed with them on their journey. Namo Amitabhaya Free. 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 Namo Amitabhaya Hri. 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 Thank you all very much. You know, this isn't, you haven't have any training into this, but we could, wow, it feels like that, doesn't it? That's it. So we can go eat. Finishing this up.